Hello and welcome to the Quick News Daily Podcast, where I give you the facts first, no clickbait stories, just real news that matters to real people. Today is Monday, September 14th, and thank you for trusting me with your news. I've got to come clean right off the bat. I don't know what happened to me, but I forgot like half the stuff I was going to talk about on Friday. So today, I'll go back and talk about a morality question with the Woodward-Trump tapes. Then I'll shift and talk about the NFL season, some corruption with the CDC data, and we'll see what else we can get to. So, let's get caught up. The most important story I missed on Friday was another ruling in this long battle over the census. Frankly, I'm not sure how there's anything left to challenge, and I think it's infuriating that the government can blow so much money trying to make our votes not count, and then say, we can't pay for that, when it comes to the Postal Service or benefits programs. But I have to stop myself right there before we get too crazy. The important thing is that last Thursday, a panel of federal judges ruled that Trump's order to Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross to come up with a number of undocumented people so that when the final census comes in, Trump can just subtract them from the total. 21 states and 15 cities and counties sued, and that ruling last Thursday was the judges' ruling in favor because the 14th Amendment says persons, not citizens, like I've mentioned before. And you can't just decide who counts as a person anymore. Also, I'm not sure how they could decide where these people live if they're not counting them, unless they'd use the filled-out census to find them and then exclude them, which is just BS. Basically, this is a suppression effort to scare undocumented folks from filling it out, so they think it won't count, so it's not worth the risk to them of exposing themselves as undocumented. That's why it's important if you have undocumented family, friends, or neighbors to urge them to fill it out, explain to them what this all means. You could wait a little bit to see if this ruling stands or if they challenge it, but they're sort of running out of time for that. There was another ruling last month telling the Census Bureau to stop winding down their operations for the end of September and to plan for the end of October like usual, pending the results of a hearing on September 17th. This is because human rights groups were afraid that they were going to be excluding minorities using the pandemic or the lack of resources to say, oh, we need to shut down earlier. So we'll see what happens on the 17th. But in general, I can't stress enough how important the census is. It'll help us get rid of gerrymandering so that Republicans can't draw maps that help them and automatically win them seats. And it's not like this is control for 2 or 4 years. It's 10. It also makes state races more important because they're the ones who actually draw the maps and approve them. In most cases, I guess. And believe me, I know firsthand because the census and then Scott Walker and the Republican legislature completely messed up Wisconsin. They did back in 2010, and we're still feeling the effects now. Like in 2018, Democrats won the popular vote across the state, like 53%, but they hold 1/3 of the legislature seats. So it matters. It matters a lot because we are just gerrymandered to hell. But anyways, this is why I say fill out your census in my sign-off every day. It is so important. So fill out your census. So on to this report about the CDC that pretty much everyone, including me, called as soon as it happened. Apparently some political appointees, including Michael Caputo, who was questioned numerous times in the Russia investigation and was a deputy to Roger Stone, so that tells you the kind of person he is. But he's now officially the Health and Human Services Department spokesperson, and he and his goons, his group of helpers, including this person Paul Alexander, are asking to review CDC reports on the coronavirus before they're sent out to the public. Basically just making them match the president's rosy tone, saying, it's all good, nothing to see here, we're fine. It's actually winding down, when it's not. Like this example right here just kind of tells you everything you need to know about who these people are. Paul Alexander, who they say is like a doctor, but must have been from Trump University or something, he says, quote, CDC, to me, appears to be writing hit pieces on the administration. CDC tried to report as if once kids get together, there will be spread and this will impact school reopening. Very misleading by CDC, and shame on them. Their aim is clear. End quote. Yeah, it's not like that happened at all. It's not like UW-Madison here is on lockdown for 2 weeks because they've had such significant spread. Oh wait, that's happened all across the country and every school that's tried to reopen. It's ridiculous. So that's basically the gist of the story. they're adding all these caveats or trying to say that things are misleading when they're not really. Essentially, they're just trying to be those bad used car salesmen and get people to think it's better than it really is out there. I feel like I would lose my Packer fan status if I didn't at least mention the full-scale return of the NFL yesterday, and the Packers beating the Minnesota Vikings, but, come on, that's not really news, is it? Not a shocker. Personally, it just felt really bizarre and confusing to me, the whole NFL thing. On the one hand, when the cameras just showed the field, the players, the action on the field, the bench, it felt like everything was normal. But then when they would show the empty seats, it just all seemed so strange, and then the fake crowd noise. I'm sure I'll get over it after a game or two, but these NFL games, or even playing Madden is tough for me, because the last time this stuff was on, our entire world was different. It just feels like it'll never be quite the same. This is just one small example, and maybe I'm making too much of it, but I feel like we're going to have a mental health reckoning fairly soon. It's like your grandparents, or maybe even your parents, who lived through the Great Depression. Maybe they were penny pinchers to the max, no matter how much money they had, or they still thought certain everyday foods symbolized wealth. Like the Great Depression, this coronavirus thing is, because it's still going on, even though we're acting like it isn't. I guess what I'm trying to say is that people's habits are going to change forever because of this. People are going to be impacted forever because of this. It was a major thing. I guess I'm sorry to be a Debbie Downer here, but I just had to mention it, because it's not going to be like a vaccine and then everything's back to normal. Oh, by the way, Packers fans, stick around to the end. I think you'll enjoy the end song. I'm hoping you get what it means. So, as soon as I got over the shock that there were real audio tapes with Trump confessing to lying to us, I began to think, why didn't Bob Woodward release these sooner? Would it have saved lives? I pushed that away though, because it's not his fault that we're in this situation. It's Donald Trump, who's supposed to be the president. I also thought, could Bob even trust anything Trump said? Because I guarantee most of what Trump said in those interviews was puffery. Just bragging to make himself look better, that sort of thing, because that's what he always does. That's what everything is. He's a salesman. He's a bad used car salesman, is what he is. Well, from Bob Woodward himself, it sounds like he's saying that was essentially what he was thinking. In an interview with the Associated Press, Woodward said, quote, "He tells me this, and I'm thinking, wow, that's interesting, but is it true? Trump says things that don't check out, right?" End quote. He goes on to say he didn't get other sources to confirm this stuff until May, which he says was too late, and he was just trying to release the book before the election, which is good, which is noble, which is what we'd prefer. I think we probably could have shut up the anti-maskers quite a bit more if these were released in May, but what's done is done. What matters now is using this audio to convince voters, and that's the trick. But what do you think? Was he right to hold on to this stuff? Should he have released it? I just want to play a few clips of some of the insane stuff that Trump has been saying lately. And this first one is from an interview with Judge Jeanine on Fox News.
And the U.S. Marshals went in to get him.
Good.
And in a short period of time, they ended in a gunfight. This guy was a violent criminal.
A lot of them out there.
And the U.S. Marshals killed him. And I will tell you something. That's the way it has to be. There has to be retribution when you have crime like this.
So, retribution with no trial, no arrest? These people just get to kill them? That's who we are now? Let's be clear. No matter if the guy's an idiot or not, an authority figure cannot be saying this in the US. This is the ultimate slippery slope into becoming a country like Russia. Because next time we're going to have a competent Donald Trump who's really going to know how to do stuff. Then we have this clip here from his rally. This was in Colorado on Saturday, and during a pandemic, he's making fun of social distancing. Take a listen.
Do you ever see him with his little circles, a circle? You know why he puts the circles? Because he wants to be correct with COVID, but it's not really, because they can't get anybody to fill up a room, so they put these big circles. So he can't get anybody to fill, nobody wants to go.
These next couple of clips are going to be from that rally as well. How about this one and his rant about Antifa, I think? Just listen to this one and see if you can make sense of it.
And with that comes tremendous crime.
And I was talking the other day. Darling, somebody just moved next door. Who is it? It's a representative of Antifa. She will look at her husband and say, darling, we're out of here. We're out of here. Antifa. Remember, they were trying to blame other people. They don't like to mention the name Antifa. I said it's Antifa, and I was right. They're bad people. And you know what? They have to pay a price for the damage and for the horror that they've caused. They have to pay a price. And it's so easy.
Here's one where he's complaining about the venue and not being able to use Air Force One.
Now, after this is over, you'll have like at NBC, this third-rate reporter stand up. They had a small crowd, a insignificant crowd in a great location. You know how great it was? We landed, we had to drive for 50 minutes. That's how great, but I like it anyway. I'll take it anyway. I like it. You're my kind of people. We love each other. I like it. We landed the big, beautiful Air Force One. I just asked as we're coming in, why couldn't we have landed here? I would have rather. Then I could have had the plane right behind me. Instead, we have the Beast. See the Beast. What you don't know is the Beast costs almost as much as the plane. It's a hell of a car. It's a walking army tank. The Beast.
He's slurring through the whole thing. Who says insignificant like that except someone who's drunk? Oh yeah, probably someone who's had a couple of mini-strokes.
Insignificant crowd.
Okay, so he said this one too many times for it to be a joke anymore.
And 52 days from now, we're going to win Nevada. And we're going to win 4 more years in the White House. And then after that, we'll negotiate, right? Because we're probably, based on the way we were treated, we're probably entitled to another 4 after that. And it should never happen to another president. It's just a dishonest group of people. But here we are.
I guarantee he thinks that he can do this. Like they'll just let him keep being president for as long as he wants. Also, very, very wishful thinking on his part, health-wise, if he's already deteriorating this fast to actually get to a 3rd term. Again, though, that's dictator stuff. That's Vladimir Putin stuff. We can't have that. It's unacceptable. We have to say it is unacceptable. Here's Donald Trump, the classy person we all know him to be.
So it's not like they haven't been here. He was a vice president for 8 years, and he only did one thing good. He treated Obama good. I was going to say something else, but they would have scolded me. That's exactly what I was going to say. But I didn't. It's better that you say it. Do you want to shout it out? Go ahead, shout. That's what I said. That's what I was going to. Thank you very much. Oh, this can only happen.
And closing with the last example of how Trump is becoming a Banana Republic dictator, another clip from that interview with Judge Jeanine.
Going to do, let's say there are threats. They say that they're going to threaten riots if they lose on election night, assuming we get a winner on election night. What are you going to do?
We'll put them down very quickly
How
if they do that. We have the right to do that. We have the power to do that if we want. Look, it's called insurrection. We just send in and we do it very easy. I mean, it's very easy. I'd rather not do that because there's no reason for it. But if we had to, we'd do that and put it down within minutes.
This is just... it's madness. This is a scary election, not because the candidate isn't good that's going against Trump, but because the people in this country are so... I've never felt worse about living here. Alright folks, that's all I've got for news today. But before we go, I do want to take a minute and tell you about the sponsor for today's show, The Time Turner, Harry Potter in Depth. Time Turner is a podcast that comes from the sibling duo of Ken and Alyssa. And on the show, they're going back and rereading all 7 books of Harry Potter, then analyzing them as they go. The show focuses on foreshadowing, themes, interesting nuggets, they try to tie it to the main end game, and they go over big questions that they still have. There's also their fair share of hot takes, so you won't want to miss those either. It's a great listen because you get a whole range of emotions. There are the serious moments when they discuss the, I guess, more problematic themes, the character flaws, the plot holes, and the miscellaneous things that come up now that we know J.K. Rowling's, shall we say, controversial views. At the same time, they have fun pointing out some of the stranger plot points and side stories that actually never come back into play. And it's even better when they take these random moments and relate it to something from their own lives. And that's where the brother-sister perspective really adds a lot to the show. Personally, the Harry Potter at Home series got me back into Harry Potter in general. It's been a long time since I've read the books, or even watched the movies for that matter. They're not an ABC Family anymore. There's not even ABC Family. But this show, Time Turner, is a great complement to Harry Potter at Home, since you can essentially listen to the audiobook read by celebrities and then get analysis from Ken and Alyssa. So I would definitely recommend that combination, listening to them side by side. It really goes well together. So far, the Time Turner podcast has covered all of Book 1, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone, and Book 2, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. And the podcast breaks them up into seasons when you're looking at it on Apple Podcasts. So that's really helpful as a listener so you know where you left off or where you need to start. It's great. Those 2 seasons are available in full on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and pretty much any of your other favorite podcast platforms. They just started Season 3 with the first episode for Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, so there's already a lot of content out there to consume, and they're still going. I've put their website in the show description, and from there you can get to all of those podcast platforms, wherever you want to listen. You can also find them on Twitter and Instagram as @TimeTurnerPod. So, give the Time Turner Harry Potter In-Depth a listen, because Ken and Alyssa have clearly put in a lot of time and thought into each episode. It's funny, it's wholesome, it's real, it's authentic, and it's certainly a must-listen for all Harry Potter fans out there. So while you're checking Time Turner out, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review here for Quick News Daily if you like what you hear. It always is really appreciated. Otherwise, stay safe, make your plan to vote, fill out your census, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Today is Tuesday, September 15th, and thank you for joining me. Man, do we have a lot to get to today.
Hats, coats, galoshes over here. But hurry, please. We have so much time and so little to see. Wait a minute. Strike that. Reverse it. Thank you.
So let's get caught up. So, this was another big story from over the weekend. It was the announcement by Mike Bloomberg that he's going to spend at least $100 million in the state of Florida to help Joe Biden win the state. This Washington Post story says that Bloomberg made the decision last week after seeing those numbers on Florida and seeing that, maybe Biden's a little underperforming there. It's a little closer than we thought. The official quote is, "Voting starts on September 24th in Florida, so the need to inject real capital in that state quickly is an urgent need." This is Bloomberg advisor Kevin Sheekey. He continues, "Mike believes that by investing in Florida, it will allow campaign resources and other Democratic resources to be used in other states, in particular, the state of Pennsylvania." So there was always this fear of, where's Bloomberg's money? He got to speak at the convention, but he's not going to fork any over, even after he said he made this promise to keep his campaign staff employed and, put all this money in to help beat Trump. Personally, I was really never worried. Biden didn't really come after Mike too personally, at least for too long. Also, because they were both from New York, I'm sure Trump gave Bloomberg his fair share of grief during the couple of terms that Mike was the mayor of New York City. You can tell when Bloomberg speaks, whenever he goes on TV, his ads were also pretty devastating, but you can just feel the vitriol, the contempt he has for Donald Trump. Mike Bloomberg is obviously a big money guy. He's a billionaire. But even he trusts Joe Biden more than Donald Trump. So that should really be a warning to everyone. And as Rick Wilson always says, Mike Bloomberg has more money in his couch cushions than Donald Trump has at all. I think alluding to the fact that Donald has some shady loans, and he's probably not even a billionaire, really, when you get down to it. Off topic, but thank goodness that is a breath of fresh air. Some good news for Joe Biden on the money side to go with an even better August. And by the way, the Biden campaign pointed out that since Calvin Coolidge in 1924, no Republican has won if they don't win Florida. And this year it really is all about Florida, because if Trump doesn't get that one, then he's got to pick up a couple from either Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and those are looking shaky. I mean, that's really, really generous because he's behind in all of them. So he needs Florida to have any chance. And that's a little note to yourself if you're watching on election night or as the votes come in the days after in the mail. Well, we're going to know pretty quickly because Florida starts counting theirs early. So we'll know on election night mostly what the vote is going to be. So if Florida starts going Biden, we're going to be in really good shape. That's when you know, okay, we might have this one. In follow-up to a story we started last week, the Supreme Court right here in my own backyard, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, decided to keep the Green Party candidate off the presidential ballot, meaning that the absentee ballots can be mailed out in time. The 4-3 decision, which is closer than it should have been, means that Green Party candidate Howie Hawkins will not be on the ballot this time, which is good for two reasons. One, obviously, the absentee ballots get mailed out on time. Voters have more time to mail them back. But also, now there's one less person to split the vote among Trump and Biden. That was the whole story about 2016. There were enough third-party votes overall to make up the difference between Trump and Clinton. So, obviously, we were all a little bit worried, well, more than a little bit probably, that something similar would happen this year and that Trump would win again because people didn't want either of them. So this helps in those two big ways. It was 3 of the liberal justices, and then 1 conservative justice dissented and went with the liberals. So it was 4-3. Again, much closer than it should have been. Now, we all remember the big TikTok scare of a couple weeks ago, don't we? Yes, back in August, Trump was talking about banning TikTok because it's owned by a Chinese company. The rumor and the buzz at that time was that it was actually going to be Microsoft who would buy at least some portion of TikTok, maybe just for US operations, but it wasn't really clear how that was going to work. Well, it seems that at the last minute here, Microsoft is out and Oracle is in. It's not set in stone yet, but some people familiar with the negotiations say that this deal would actually look more like what TikTok has wanted all along, which is that Oracle could take a stake in a newly formed US TikTok business while serving as a tech partner and housing TikTok's American user data on its servers. That's according to Bloomberg. Ironic. So that's the whole point of contention here. That data, where is it stored, what can they do with it? Obviously, with Mr. Look at Me, I'm Tough on China, Trump, he wants the data here, and he and Mike Pompeo are all spreading the, well, what are they doing? They can watch you at any time. They're watching you right now. They're listening to you record this podcast. It's just all, it's almost to the point where I don't want to criticize TikTok anymore because it just feels so racist. It's just so anti-Chinese. At the same time, it is more towards the Chinese Communist Party, but as with all things Trump, it's taken a little bit to the extreme and is getting into the territory where it's more all Chinese people are bad. So we can't have our data over there because they're bad people. But yeah, shockingly, it is Oracle, not Microsoft, who might be swooping in for the TikTok deal. The reason I called today's show Bloomberg was because that seems to really be the theme of the day. This next story also comes courtesy of Bloomberg and their investigative team, and it's about a major development in the QAnon saga. Now, QAnon is the Pizzagate, Hillary Clinton, pedophile sex ring, BS lies, and all those conspiracy theories where Donald Trump is fighting the deep state and he was sent by God himself, or whatever it was. Well, a website titled qmap.pub was recently taken down after Bloomberg's investigative team located its owner and finally found out the identity of the owner. So QMap.pub, it's under the umbrella of QAppanon, It's the online name of HuMap's creator, and they have their own Patreon account, so they're accepting donations as well. I would not recommend contributing to that one. But in March, they said that they were going to release an Android app titled Armor of God, which would be a social network for all these QAnon followers. The app developer's email address was then listed on Google Play's page, so like where they could download the app. And through that, Bloomberg's investigative team was able to trace it to New Jersey state business records, and the parent company, Patriot Platforms LLC, matches the address of Jason Galinas. So he ostensibly, and allegedly for legal reasons, is the owner of this app and of this website. Now, what's special about Jason Galinas? Why would I spend so much time on this? Well, as it turns out, Mr. Galinas is a senior vice president of a company. So that makes it a big deal, right? Oh, but hold on just 1 second. It's not just any company. It's Citigroup. That's right, Citigroup, who you might actually know from owning Citibank, one of the largest banks in the US. A senior vice president was allegedly in on this QAnon stuff. He believed in it enough that he made a website and an app for it. When they confronted him outside of his home to try to get a comment, he said, quote, "I'm not going to comment on any of that. I'm not going to get involved. I want to stay out of it." End quote. But this group, this investigative team, also reported that Galinas was wearing an American flag baseball cap and offered a comment about the QAnon following, calling it, quote, "a patriotic movement to save the country." So, doubling down, really. I mean, I just don't get it. He could even try to deny that he was involved with the website or the app. Maybe he knew it was too rock solid of a case. But he could have tried to do that and say, like, I don't know anything about QAnon. I'm not going to comment. I don't know what's going on here. But no, he decides to double down, give his support for QAnon as an executive of Citigroup. So even if it turns out that he wasn't involved in the app or the website, unlikely, a Citigroup higher-up still voiced support for the same group that alleges that Hillary Clinton was running a child sex ring in the basement of a pizza parlor. Just think about that for 1 second. I don't know what else to call this except a very scary development in the trial of a COVID vaccine. So I think a couple weeks ago I mentioned that AstraZeneca had to briefly put their vaccine trial on pause because one person came down with I forget what the exact term was, but they weren't quite sure what the source of the side effect was. Well, now they're releasing what the patient went through, and it does not sound great. So AstraZeneca, who's running this with Oxford University over in Britain, said the trial volunteer recovered from a severe inflammation of the spinal cord, but is no longer hospitalized. This is from an article on CNN. It goes on to say they have not confirmed that the patient was afflicted with transverse myelitis, but Dr. Avindra Nath, who has the title of Intramural Clinical Director and a leader of viral research at the National Institute for Neurological Disorders and Stroke, an NIH division, so National Institute of Health division. Again, don't ask those people where they work because you'll be there all day. So AstraZeneca didn't confirm this transverse myelitis, but Nath and another neurologist said they understood this to be the case. Transverse myelitis produces a set of symptoms involving inflammation along the spinal cord that can cause pain, muscle weakness, and, paralysis. All that said, Britain's version of the FDA, which is called the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, reviewed the case and has allowed the trial to resume over in the UK. However, our NIH is still investigating and seeing what we should do about the problem. These specialists say that there could be several causes for this myelitis. One is that vaccines often bring out previously undiscovered conditions that patients have. So the vaccine triggers an immune response, and sometimes when that immune response happens, it sort of, it causes a lot to happen within your body. So things that you might not have otherwise discovered come to the forefront. That's kind of the hope in this one. There was a patient who earlier had similar symptoms early on in the trial, but they found out that she had multiple sclerosis, so they chalked it up to that. But the second one, and they'll have to see if this person has any underlying health conditions, but they're worried that the second one could be more of what they call molecular mimicry. which is where some small piece of the vaccine may be similar to tissue in the brain or spinal cord, resulting in an immune attack on that tissue in response to the vaccine component. So if that's the case, this infectious disease specialist that they quote in the article says another occurrence of transverse myelitis would be likely if that trial resumed. And if this were to happen, a second case would shut down the trial. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The thing to keep in mind is that this condition occurs at a rate of 1 in 250,000 people. So it's rare, and it, quote, strikes most often as a result of the body's immune response to a virus. Less frequently, such episodes have also been linked to vaccines. So, at least now we know a bit more about what that volunteer went through, what their symptoms were. It wasn't just like flu-like symptoms or something like that. It definitely does sound pretty serious, and man, who could have predicted that, rushing through all these trials, except a lot of people? Now, obviously, we do have to wait for the final results to see if this was linked, but, I don't know. Seems like a pretty big coincidence if it's not. Thinking back to when I mentioned that acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf was actually found to be installed illegally, like he's in the position illegally, a federal judge in Maryland has agreed with that decision from the Government Accountability Office. The ruling was actually issued last Friday, and the gist of it was that when the last Homeland Security Secretary, the last one who was actually nominated and a full-time secretary, Kirstjen Nielsen, you might remember her? So when she left, Kevin McAleenan took over on an acting basis, and he modified the order of succession, so like if he stepped down, who would take over, so that it would make sure that Wolf was the one who would take over, because Wolf is just like, basically he's been a lobbyist his entire career. He has no experience with Homeland Security, he's just there to, he's just a Trump lackey. So the first acting secretary's appointment was actually ruled invalid, and that was found to be because of the order of succession. So when he also modified the order of succession, that meant that Wolf's transition into the position was also invalid. So this guy who's talking about sending troops in everywhere and cracking down on protesters and loves the idea of throwing them in unmarked vans, yeah, he's there illegally himself. Now, that doesn't mean he's leaving, of course, because why would they do that? But the irony of you yourself being illegal and saying, oh, law and order this, law and order that, it's insane. It's too much. It's literally too much to handle. It's so... the irony. It's almost as crazy as saying this.
I want my commander-in-chief to be able to calm under pressure. I want him to not exert hysteria to the American people and cause a panic. That doesn't mean he's not dealing with it sincerely or severely, but, that's the reality. Bob Woodward is a couple of weeks before an election. He's got to crank out another book. He was right once 40 years ago, and he's carried it that way ever since.
In case maybe you didn't recognize the voice, that was Donald Trump Jr. supposedly talking about Joe Biden. Like Joe Biden is the madman, the guy who is just in over his head. Just the projection of these people is incredible. Well, that's going to wrap it up for me here on this Tuesday. I think you guys know the drill by now. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening. That's number one. First and foremost, most important. Number two is leave a review. If the platform you're on lets you leave a review, because that really does help the show get out there, get more visibility, I would appreciate it there. Again, we do have merchandise available with the Quick News Daily logo on it. Everything from masks, shirts, fanny packs, long sleeve shirts. It's getting a little bit chillier up by me. Whatever you want, we have. Otherwise, as always, stay safe, make your plan to vote, fill out your census. Today we've got a lot of updates on stories I've covered in the past, including Alexei Navalny, Breonna Taylor, and Michael Caputo. Then we have Trump lying during a town hall, because of course, and a really disturbing story if it's true. Folks, there's not a minute to waste, so let's get caught up. Thankfully, Alexei Navalny seems to be progressing well after being poisoned with a nerve agent. Navalny is that leader from Russia who opposes Putin. And yesterday, he was able to make a post on Instagram. In the post, he mostly talked about breathing on his own, since he's off a ventilator now, which is good. His spokesperson also confirmed that he'll be returning to Russia when he recovers. I don't know, man. He is much, much more brave than I would be. I think I would keep at least 4 countries between me and Russia if I got poisoned with a nerve agent. I can only make sense of this by assuming that he thinks the extra attention on him will mean it's harder to kill him without people knowing. In my opinion, that's kind of a risky bet. I mean, they don't even know for sure how he was poisoned this time, so I bet it's even easier if Navalny is in Russia again. By the way, it's been reported that Germany, France, and Sweden have all independently confirmed that Navalny was indeed poisoned by the Novichok nerve agent. In what's being called a historical settlement, the family of Breonna Taylor was awarded $12 million, as well as the promise that police reforms would be put into place, including reforms such as establishing a housing credit program in the hopes of having officers live where they serve, using social workers to go along on certain police calls, and requiring commanders to review and approve search warrants. Breonna's mom seemed most grateful for the police reforms, saying, quote, "The police reform measures that we were able to get passed as part of this settlement mean so much more to my family, our community, and to Breonna's legacy." All that said, the mayor said the city is not admitting wrongdoing in the incident. So, you pass a law banning no-knock warrants, then you settle a lawsuit out of court promising $12 million in police reforms, and you still haven't arrested the officers who killed Breonna, or even admitted wrongdoing? It kind of sounds like those other 2 things admit wrongdoing, but hey, that's just me. The man who is allegedly her killer, former Officer Brett Hankison, is still out on the loose. Well, just a couple of days after mentioning him, good friend of the show Michael Caputo is once again back under fire. Politico is reporting that yesterday he held an emergency staff meeting to address rumors that have been going on around him, I guess, but mostly that disturbing Facebook Live video he posted over the weekend and then deleted his account. In the video, he claims a lot of stuff, but let's take a listen to just a little bit of it.
Whether it's the Buffalo News or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or any of these media outlets, I'm under siege. It's been going on for a couple of weeks, and I don't care because I have the president's support. I know that because he's told me so. They're after me for 2 reasons, and when I want to tell you what they are so you understand, and you understand that I'm not going anywhere. They're going to have to kill me. And unfortunately, I think that's where this is going. The partisan Democrats, the conjugal media, and the scientists, the deep state scientists, want America sick through November. They cannot afford for us to have any good news before November because they're already losing. Donald Trump right now, if the election were held today, would win.
Okay, so he's claiming that he might take a medical leave, sort of a convenient way to get out of there. Politico said that he's already on thin ice with Trump, and that was before the Facebook Live thing. So, if I had to put money on it, I would bet that he's going to be taking a medical leave here pretty quickly. A former HHS official also told Politico that Caputo has long complained of the stress caused by having been mentioned in the special counsel's investigation on Russian interference in the 2016 election. It also says Caputo also disputed anonymous White House criticism about his mental health, saying that some of his comments have been taken out of context, and concluded the meeting by encouraging his staff to listen to music by the Grateful Dead. Okay, alright, so, that sounds like a normal person who is completely and mentally all there, right? Like, that doesn't sound like anyone who would have mental health issues. Just, of course it does. Now, here's where we have to separate things, or at least I'm going to. If he truly has these mental health problems, he really needs to go get them checked out. He needs to leave his position and never come back. And I don't ever want to make fun of someone for having mental health issues because you just never know. You never know what's going on with someone. That said, if his mental health issue is that he's annoyed and paranoid of being investigated because he was a criminal and worked with the Russian government during 2016, which I think it's pretty clear that everyone did. I mean, he's an associate of Roger Stone, who is indicted and convicted on 7 felonies. And even though he got his sentence commuted and he's out spewing lies again, because that's just who Roger Stone is, Roger Stone is still a felon. So, again, if his mental health issues is just paranoia because he's a criminal, and criminals usually get investigated, I got no love lost for him. But man, if he truly believes what he's saying in those Facebook videos, he really does have problems. This disturbing, if true, story is the one about an ICE detention center in Georgia, where one doctor there is accused of performing mass hysterectomies on these immigrants being held there, as well as refusing to test detainees for COVID-19 and shredding medical records. This is a sort of whistleblower complaint. It's coming from a nurse who works at that facility. It's the Irwin County Detention Center, again in Georgia. Apparently in the complaint, she says that the gynecologist is called, quote, the uterus collector, and was performing, quote, mass hysterectomies, end quote. Now, it's still early in the story, and maybe by the end of the day today, more will have come out about it, because even yesterday, some of the bigger networks were starting to pick up on it. So, we'll be able to see if there's more here, if there's, substantial truth to it. But yeah, this is one to watch closely because earlier in June, when Trump was gassing peaceful protesters, it was like living in the V for Vendetta world. Now, if this is true, it's like The Handmaid's Tale. So it's like the crossover you would never want, like V for Vendetta and Handmaid's Tale. So like, what, H for Handmaid's Tale? I don't know, but it's like the worst of both worlds. Both of those stories are back in the 80s, so at that time you're like, okay, these are a little bit extreme. I don't think this could ever happen. Maybe the ideas are there, but it would never happen. And then 2020 is like, hey man, hold my beer. So this is one story that I'll be watching closely and updating you on as we hear more and more either evidence or, evidence to disprove it. A quick update to the Florida polling problems that Biden has had, supposedly, as well as the Bloomberg cash infusion in the state. The good news about those polls coming out early is that everyone everyone got freaked out about them, so now resources are absolutely pouring into Florida. And Mike Madrid, one of the founders of the Lincoln Project, who's in charge of political operations for them, confirmed yesterday that they will indeed be moving into Florida as well. Moving some of their operations, some of their ads. I saw that they already released a Spanish language one just yesterday, I think. So now they're even joining the fight. Obviously, that's really good news, and thank goodness that this came out so early that everyone sort of had time to course correct and adjust and focus their eyes on Florida. Because, like I said, it's all about Florida, and if Trump doesn't get Florida, good night. Just another sign of the times and what a perilous position we're actually in. The Scientific American has broken with its tradition of not endorsing anyone for president. In their 175-year history, the Scientific American has never endorsed anyone for president, but they broke that rule yesterday, and they endorsed Joe Biden, citing the fact that Trump has completely ignored all of the science on climate change, as well as openly admitted to ignoring the science on coronavirus to help his re-election chances. Man, if even the scientists are getting involved, you know we're in a really, really tough spot as a country. Lastly here, the Trump town hall that took place on ABC last night. It was moderated by George Stephanopoulos, and it went about as well as you thought it might have. Trump constantly lying. Sometimes the voters were actually fact-checking him in real time, which was nice. Here's one of the highlights.
The wearing of masks has proven to lessen the spread of COVID. Why don't you support a mandate for national mask wearing, and why don't you wear a mask more often?
Well, I do wear them when I have to and when I'm in hospitals and other locations, but I will say this. They said at the Democrat convention they're going to do a national mandate. They never did it because they've checked out and they didn't do it. And a good question is you ask, like Joe Biden, they said we're going to do a national mandate on masks.
He's called on all governors to have them. It is a state responsibility.
No, but he didn't do it. I mean, he never did it. Now, there is, by the way, a lot of people don't want to wear masks. There are a lot of people think the masks are not good. And there are a lot of people that, as an example,
Who are those people?
Well, I'll tell you who those people are. Waiters, they come over and they serve you, and they have a mask. And I saw it the other day where they were serving me. And they're playing with a mask. I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying what happens. They're playing with a mask, so the mask is over, and they're touching it, and then they're touching the plate. That can't be good. There are a lot of people. If you look at Dr. Fauci's original statement, you look at a lot of people, CDC, you look at a lot of people's original statement, they said very strongly, George, don't wear masks. Then all of a sudden they went to wear masks. The concept of a mask is good, but it also does, you're constantly touching it, you're touching your face, you're touching plates. There are people that don't think masks are good.
Yep, because Joe Biden is president who could have done that. It's you, man. Like, you're the one who could have done a national mask mandate. You're the president for now, not Joe Biden. Another one here?
Right here, she's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and you actually haven't voted before. How are you?
Hello, hi. My question is, if you believe it's the president's responsibility to protect America, why would you downplay a pandemic that is known to disproportionately harm low-income families and minority communities?
Yeah. Well, I didn't downplay it. I actually, in many ways, I upplayed it in terms of action. My action was very strong. Yeah, because what I did was with China, I put a ban on. With Europe, I put a ban on. And we would have lost thousands of more people had I not put the ban on. So that was called action, not with the mouth, but in actual fact. We did a very, very good job when we put that ban on. Whether you call it talent or luck, it was very important. So we saved a lot of lives when we did that.
There were holes in the ban, and the European ban didn't come for another month.
Well, they were Americans. I mean, the holes in were if you have somebody in China that's an American citizen, we had to let them in. I mean, there were.
This one, I mean, it's just too easy.
I wanted to always play it down.
Yeah, that's your own voice on the tape, man. You admitted to downplaying it, not anyone else. Last one here.
With time, it goes
many
away.
deaths.
And you'll develop herd, like a herd mentality. It's going to be herd developed, and that's going to happen. And if we did follow that approach, I think we might have 2 million people dead.
The fact checker for CNN, Daniel Dale, who made a huge splash after the Republican National Convention and Trump's speech when he went on that 3-minute rant about all the lies in that speech. Well, he was back at it last night again, this time for this town hall. He does address things that I've already brought up here, but it's just easier to let the man go and not really interrupt his stream of consciousness. Let's take a listen.
Daniel, let me bring you in, because you've been busy fact-checking this town hall. What stood out to you?
There was just so much lying, Don. I'm going to go quickly here, so literally just stop me whenever you need to. He said again, Democrats won't protect people with pre-existing conditions. That is nonsense. As a voter told him, Democrats created those protections. He insisted he didn't praise China on the virus. He did so repeatedly. We know that. He claimed that nobody knew at the time he was praising China that seniors were especially susceptible to the virus. That was one of the first things we learned out of China and out of Italy and out of the U.S. He claimed that Biden said in March that the pandemic was, quote, totally over-exaggerated. I can find no evidence that Biden ever said that. He said that Winston Churchill was kind of like him playing down stuff because he went on rooftops in London during the Nazi bombing and told people everything's going to be good. Churchill did not speak from the rooftops and did not say everything's going to be good. He warned of suffering and danger. Trump said that he fired James Mattis. Mattis resigned. He said that protesters took over 20% of Seattle. It was a 6-block area, nowhere close to 20%. He took credit again for sending in the National Guard in Minneapolis, saying that this happened after a week and a half of violence there. It was not even close to a week and a half. It was days, and the Democratic governor is the one who activated the Guard. He said he essentially repealed Obamacare by getting rid of the individual mandate. Not even close to true with the Medicaid expansion, pre-existing conditions protections, other stuff remains. He said the cupboards were empty of ventilators. His administration admits he inherited about 16,000 from Obama. He did his usual false boast about so-called bans on travel from China and Europe. They were not complete bans. He said stocks are owned by, quote, everybody. Just about half of Americans own stocks. He repeated his nonsense about testing causing cases. Testing merely reveals and helps fight cases. He said that Biden has agreed to a Bernie Sanders style socialized healthcare. He fought Sanders on that issue. He has very much not agreed to a Sanders-style plan. And Don, this is a preliminary list. I have hours of fact-checking tonight to do because there is even more than this. So this was just a fire hose of lying, again, from the president.
Do you need a drink of water?
Yeah, I think I'm like spitting at my camera here, so I apologize to the viewers.
It was like just, about an hour and a half town hall, and
yes. Like every line or every other line was just false or misleading. It was crazy.
Okay, and then, well, let's talk about what he said about crime. Listen to what the president said about crime tonight. Here it is.
If you're going to stop crime, we have to give the respect back to the police that they deserve. They've done a fantastic job in so many locations, but then bad things happen. Look at New York. New York was a very safe city. Rudy Giuliani did a fantastic job. The city was safe, and then all of a sudden we have a mayor. He starts cutting the police force, and crime is up 100%, 150%. I saw one form of crime up 300%.
What are the facts, Daniel?
So there have been spikes in certain kinds of crime in New York City this year, particularly shootings, where there's been a more than 100% increase, not a 300% increase, but substantial. The thing to remember, though, is that crime has fallen hugely since even Giuliani's final year. So Giuliani presided over a decrease. Then there's been a subsequent big decrease. So last year in 2019, there were fewer than half the murders under Bill de Blasio than there were in the last year of Giuliani. So yes, this year has been an increase, but the city is still way safer than it was in Giuliani's last year in 2001.
Well, there you go. Don't let facts get in the way of a good story.
That's it for me here on this midway point of the week. You can do the usual things, rate and review the show wherever you're listening, as well as leaving personal feedback for me with that Google form I linked to in the episode description. The feedback goes straight to me anonymously, and you can have a real impact on what the show looks like. So make sure to take advantage there. Otherwise, that's about it, I think. As always, stay safe, make your plan to vote, fill out your census, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Well, ladies and gents, it seems like every day brings another huge signal not to vote for Trump. Sometimes the sky turns orange because we're ignoring the climate. Sometimes the president tells you to drink bleach to beat a killer virus. And other times he reenacts walking down a ramp. Down a ramp. Lucky for us, he gave us a couple more of those signature moments yesterday. So I'll tell you all about those, as well as a check-in with our favorite propagandist, Michael Caputo, some vaccine news, and even more. Do you remember when Barack Obama was such a narcissist that when his town hall didn't get good ratings, he had a meltdown at a press conference the next day? Remember that? No, of course you don't, because we've never had a spoiled toddler for president. Obviously, I'm making some assumptions here, but it is 100% true that Trump's ABC town hall didn't even crack the top 5 programs of the night. The top 5 in terms of viewers were America's Got Talent, America's Got Talent with 5.94 million viewers, Nuggets Clippers Game 7, Tucker Carlson's White Power Hour, Sean Hannity, then at number 5, Big Brother with 4.13 million. Trump's Town Hall, drumroll please, drew 3.97 million viewers. Ouch. If you were a normal person, though, that wouldn't matter to you. But if you're a narcissist and you only care about yourself and don't possess the ability to care for others, you might go out and say this. Hey, Donald, hey, hi. Maybe you don't want to say dead Americans don't matter because they live in states that vote for Democrats. I mean, I know you said dead American soldiers were losers and suckers, so this isn't surprising. But yeah, maybe don't say that. Maybe don't say that part out loud. Honestly, folks, how do people still believe in this guy? Even if you think he's a sinner or whatever, but then he does good stuff in his actions, isn't there some limit? I guess not. Especially if they only watch Fox. Sadly, that wasn't the end of the press conference. Naturally, since his CDC director told the truth in his testimony in front of Congress yesterday, Trump spent nearly the entire press conference ripping him to shreds. In that testimony, Dr. Redfield said he expects vaccinations to start in November or December, dangling it right around the election, of course. But he also said it'll be in limited supply, and only those who are most in need will get it, so like healthcare workers and the elderly. The entire public will take about 6 to 9 months to get vaccinated, meaning that normal life, if we remember it, will take until about the third quarter of next year, so about 1 year from now, best case. That didn't please the dear leader, though. So Dr. Trump, infectious disease extraordinaire, said, quote, "I think he made a mistake when he said that. It's just incorrect information, and I called him and he didn't tell me that. And I think he got the message maybe confused. Maybe it was stated incorrectly. We're ready to go immediately as the vaccine is announced. And it could be announced in October." Oh, well there you have it. October. 11 months before the experts said. Interesting. Dr. Redfield also let this slip, to which Donald Trump said, quote, "The mask is not as important as the vaccine. As far as the mask is concerned, I hope that the vaccine's going to be a lot more beneficial than the masks because people have used the masks." No, they haven't, Donald. Because you keep making fun of people who do. It doesn't help that only 42% of Americans want a vaccine. As it turns out, people don't want you injecting things in them when you've lied about almost everything else. Kind of hurts the credibility. And of course, the press conference wasn't over without this classic line from Kayleigh McEnany. The updates on Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny are coming fast and furious now, as his team is claiming that they have found... His team is now claiming that he was poisoned with a hotel water bottle. After they heard that he had fallen ill really suspiciously, his team went back to his hotel room and started gathering up anything they thought could be useful, including those water bottles. A quote from a post made by the team says, "It was decided to gather up everything that could even hypothetically be useful and hand it to the doctors in Germany. The fact that the case would not be investigated in Russia was quite obvious. 2 weeks later, a German laboratory found traces of Novichok precisely on the bottle of water from the Tomsk hotel room. And then more laboratories that took analyses from Alexei confirmed that that was what poisoned Navalny. Now we understand. It was done before he left his hotel room to go to the airport." End quote. So, another part of the mystery solved. It sounds like much of Europe is going back into their lockdowns as they've seen COVID-19 infections spike recently. According to the World Health Organization, more than half of European nations have reported an increase of more than 10% in new cases in the past 2 weeks. Of those, 7 countries have seen newly reported cases increase more than twofold in the same period. Sadly, again, the biggest proportion of new cases is among 25 to 49-year-olds. So, I guess there must still be this thought out there that it's not serious for younger people. And it's not as serious, but, you know, you hear these heart conditions pop up and we don't even really know, we don't even really know what happens long term. So, yes, again, it looks like Europe going into more lockdowns, and if it's that bad over there, can you imagine what it's like over here when we don't really have that much testing and we don't even care about it anymore and our states are almost completely open? It's just madness. This new information about Trump's Lafayette Square stroll and clearing peaceful protesters with tear gas should alarm everyone. There's another whistleblower out there, this time from the military. He's a National Guard major, and his name is Adam DeMarco. Major DeMarco says that the Defense Department's lead military police officer for the National Capital Region sent an email to the DC National Guard asking if they possessed a long-range acoustic device that's used to transmit loud noises. To clear up crowds. Or an active denial system, ADS, which is a heat ray. I'm not kidding you, we actually have a heat ray. Now, this isn't Dr. Evil, but it sounds as bad as it sounds almost as bad as you would think. The ADS system, this heat ray, emits a directed beam of energy that causes a burning sensation and was considered a non-lethal way to control crowds, especially, I'm guessing, in the Middle East when it was harder to tell who were the bad guys and who were the good guys. That's what you hear a lot from the region, the soldiers who came back, is that it was, it's harder to tell. However, it's not clear if it's been used much or at all, since it seems like after some testing, it seems like there may be some actual burns and more severe injuries, other than, just the sensation that they're talking about. I would guess that's probably the case because, I don't know. I guess I don't know what their technology is, but I feel like if you get a burning sensation, there's gotta be something causing that. In any case, the fact that they were even thinking of using this on peaceful protesters so that Trump could go hold the Bible upside down outside of a church is just... Like I said, this is the V for Vendetta world that we live in these days. In just some super quick news, some really just short pieces of information. There was a new Quinnipiac poll out yesterday. It released some results on some of the Senate races going on, and in Maine, it had Sarah Gideon up 12 points, 54 to 42 over Susan Collins. It was reported that Susan Collins was deeply troubled and her brow was very, very furrowed. In addition, it has Jamie Harrison, the Democrat, in a tie 48-48 with Lindsey Graham. The South Carolina poll, I'm not as surprised at. The race has been remarkably close, especially for South Carolina. But this Maine one is where I'm getting a bit suspicious here. That one has showed like a tie or even a Susan Collins lead for most of the time. Sometimes it's been like, 3-4 points. There have been some times where Gideon shows that she's up 3 to 4 points, but mostly it's been pretty close. So this 12 points, especially since Gideon's all the way up to 54%, I have to think this might be an outlier. Now, according to 538, Quinnipiac is a B+ rated pollster, so not bad, but it doesn't fit the trend. Now, if we get a couple more of these, then it gets interesting. Interior Minister / Attorney General William Barr is making a fool of himself once again, this time saying, quote, and this is real, putting a national lockdown, stay-at-home orders, is like house arrest. Other than slavery, which is a different kind of restraint, this is the greatest intrusion on civil liberties in American history. End quote. Ooh, okay. Maybe don't want to be comparing those two things. I saw someone on Twitter, it was something like, yeah, these things aren't really comparable. It's either literally being forced to work for someone and kept in slavery, or having to do Applebee's curbside pickup. It's like, so many people asked, like, oh, my life is so hectic, I wish I could just get a break. And then you get a forced 2-week break. And literally all we had to do was like 2 weeks of sheltering in our homes. We could still go out, just not necessarily eat out or get haircuts or whatever, but my God, William Barr, what are you thinking, man? But yeah, what a clown. What a clown that William Barr is. What a disgrace he is. And just this morning, you had Donald Trump once again trying to undermine absentee ballots. And this morning, once again, Donald Trump is on Twitter trying to undermine mail-in ballots. But thankfully, Twitter seems to have wasted no time in marking that as misleading or false. They have this little thing on the tweet that says, learn how voting by mail is safe and secure. So, thankfully, Twitter jumped on that pretty quickly. Alrighty, I think that's going to do it for me here today. Just as a heads up, I'm not quite sure yet, but I'm toying with the idea of maybe taking the day off tomorrow. Unless, of course, there's some super big news that we just really need to discuss, which is always likely with Donald Trump in charge. But maybe but I'm sort of thinking of maybe just writing something instead, or just taking the whole day off completely. So, if there's no new episode tomorrow, don't be too shocked. Some other business I do have to take care of, though, and I record it every single day, but it just gets lost in the editing process somehow. Thanking our contributors. Thanking our contributors. We, of course, have our executive producer, Gwen, and producer, Kathy, and again, thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for the support. Other than that, there's just the usuals. Reviews, rating the show, merchandise. Yeah, that's about it. So in that case, as always...